Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating analysis by writer Jimmy Perez. Perez takes a deep dive into the biblical text of Mark chapter 2, but here's the thing, he doesn't just treat it like some dusty, ancient historical account. Instead, he frames this whole chapter as a profound and incredibly relevant exploration of human nature. It's essentially an explainer about how we grow, how we change, and honestly, how we constantly manage to get in our own way. Right off the bat, Perez hits us with this massive central thesis. He argues that this text reveals a universal tension that is literally still living inside every single human heart today. We're talking about the conflict between maintaining our outward appearance, the performance we put on for everyone, and the pursuit of genuine inward transformation, which is the actual condition of our soul. According to Perez, every single story in this chapter features Jesus confronting our absolute obsession with how things look on the outside while we completely neglect what's going on the inside. So, what's the big question this text is asking all of us? It really boils down to this. Will you cling to appearances, to tradition, and to performance? Or will you actually allow yourself to be changed from the inside out? To get to the bottom of this, Perez breaks the text down into 4 specific case studies that perfectly highlight this inner conflict. Our first case study is healing the inner paralysis, where 4 friends literally tear through a roof to bring a paralyzed man to Jesus. Now, what happens next is wild. You'd completely expect Jesus to immediately address the most obvious issue in the room, right? The guy can't walk. But instead, his very first words are, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Perez points out that this shocked absolutely everyone in the room. Why would he say that? Because before addressing the physical body, he had to address the much deeper paralysis of the man's heart. The biggest problem wasn't his legs. It was a spiritual separation from the life he was actually intended to live. And this is such a powerful lesson for us. Think about it. Every single one of us carries around forms of paralysis that you just can't see with the naked eye. Things like fear, shame, pride, addiction, bitterness, unforgiveness, or just plain old false beliefs. Perez notes that these hidden conditions often cripple people way more severely than any physical limitation ever could. That inner paralysis, that is the real barrier. Those 4 friends didn't let a physical roof stop them. But what about us? Perez throws out a pretty tough challenge here. What roof is keeping you from fully surrendering to transformation? Because let's be real, transformation doesn't just happen by accident. Sometimes we have to tear through whatever is standing in our way. Maybe your roof is your love for comfort, or your endless excuses, or maybe it's pride, or just a massive fear of what other people think. Moving right along to our second case study, Grace for the Unlikely. This one is all about a despised tax collector who gets called to leave his old life behind. The religious leaders back then were completely scandalized when Jesus decided to sit down and share a meal with a room full of outcasts. They were all about outward perfection. But Jesus replies with this famous line, "I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Perez breaks this down to show that true growth is never built on the illusion of perfection. It's built on humility. If you think you already have everything figured out, you literally can't learn anything new. But the folks who are fully aware of their own brokenness, they are primed and ready for change.
And Levi's response? He doesn't sit there and negotiate. He doesn't hesitate. He just gets up and leaves his tax booth. Perez breaks this down into 3 crucial steps of change, both psychological and literal. Step 1, you have to leave that old identity behind. Step 2, start walking toward the new one. And step 3, allow that whole process to reveal who you were actually created to become. You absolutely have to release who you've been to get there.
Which leads to a fantastic gut check. Ask yourself right now, am I protecting an identity I have outgrown? We do this all the time, don't we? We cling to old habits, old friend groups, or old ways of doing things just because it's familiar. We stay sitting at that tax booth because stepping into the unknown is terrifying, even when we know perfectly well that our current identity just isn't serving us anymore. And that flows perfectly into our third vignette, New Wine, Old Wineskins, where the Pharisees are questioning the disciples about why they aren't sticking to traditional rituals. The answer they get is this vivid illustration. You can't patch an old garment with new cloth, and you definitely can't pour new wine into old wineskins, because the old skins will literally burst. Perez's interpretation of this metaphor is spot on. He says so many of us approach personal growth like we're just trying to improve the old self, slapping a little patch here or adding a quick new habit there. But true transformation, that's about creating something entirely new. The crucial point here is that transformation requires you to become a completely new vessel. The process of profound change isn't about making your old identity just 5% better. As Perez points out, your old beliefs, your old fears, and your old ways of thinking simply cannot contain the new life and the fresh insights you're trying to take in. You can't just bolt this onto your existing life. You have to replace the whole vessel. It's a tough pill to swallow, for sure. So think about it. What old way of thinking can no longer hold what you are learning right now? Identify those outdated mindsets you're carrying around. Because if you keep trying to pour this new, transformed life into the rigid, old framework of your past insecurities, well, something is eventually going to break. Now we hit our final vignette, rest instead of rules. This section dives deep into the exhaustion of legalism, right after the disciples that criticized for picking grain on the Sabbath. Jesus answers his critics by completely flipping the script on them. He says the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Perez unpacks this beautifully, explaining how religion and legalism have this tragic way of turning intended blessings into incredibly heavy burdens. The Sabbath was supposed to be this amazing gift of rest, right? But an obsession with performance turned it into just another exhausting set of rules you had to blindly follow. Look at this contrast. It's pretty stark. On one side, we have this massive trap that so many of us fall into: the constant striving, the proving ourselves, the comparison, and the performing. Perez calls this the sheer exhaustion of legalistic religion. But on the other side, we have true relationship, acceptance, resting, and love. Perez notes that the deeper meaning of the Sabbath isn't just taking one day off a week. It's an inner condition of the soul. Your soul only truly rests when you stop trying to earn everyone's approval and finally learn to live from a place of genuine acceptance. So, time to get honest again. Am I serving rules, or am I allowing my heart to be transformed? Take a hard look at your daily routines, your disciplines. Are they just another way of performing for an audience, or are they actually contributing to the inner rest and transformation of your soul? Bringing it all together now for our final section, the greatest miracle, which synthesizes this entire chapter. When you step back, every single encounter we've talked about contrasts two very distinct types of people. On one hand, you have folks who desperately cling to outward appearances, protect tradition at all costs, perform their religion, and seek approval through endless effort. On the other hand, you have those who are actually willing to be changed on the inside. They embrace surrender, they welcome transformation, they experience real relationship, and they receive grace through simple humility. Which brings us to what I think is the most powerful takeaway from Perez's whole analysis. The greatest miracle is not that our circumstances change. The greatest miracle is that we change. This entire text is screaming that the goal was never just behavior modification. The goal is total identity transformation. For change to actually last, it has to begin deep within the soul, long before anyone else can see it on the outside. And I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative question today. Will you protect the person you have been, or will you allow the creation of the person you were made to become? It really is a choice between the comfort of our old performance and the absolute miracle of true inner transformation. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through Jimmy Perez's work, and I really hope this explainer gave you some profound new insights to carry with you this week.